The following program contains drug references, strong language, and images and descriptions of violence.
You have 26 messages.
Tony's Colton, can you give us a ring? Cheers, mate. Tom, can you ring us back? If he's dead, will you ring us straight back as soon as you can? We're worried.
You have no more messages.
Police have launched a murder inquiry after 3 men were found shot dead in Essex. A farmer discovered the bodies this morning in a Range Rover parked on a farm track near Chelmsford.
The dead men are said to include nightclub king Tony Tucker, leader of the notorious Essex Boys, who were known for supplying ecstasy to raves across the county.
They were big shots. Tony wanted full control over the movement and sale of ecstasy. Money became his god. And he didn't mind people getting hurt. I don't know who pulled the trigger, but they were picking up enemies by the day.
These were guys that really lived in the murky underworld. He could be any one of a number of people.
This case is a classic detective story.
I've dealt with some serious crime, but this was the most serious.
Pressure is mounting on police to find a suspect as Essex appears to be gripped in a full-scale drug war.
You need to stand up for law and order. Stop the pushers poisoning our children.
2 ruthless gunmen received 3 life sentences at the Old Bailey. The convictions have been described as some of the most important in Essex in the past 30 years.
My brother, he's not a killer. You know, he's not a violent man. He's not Jack.
As a detective, there's no fingerprints, there's no blood, there's no DNA. So you've got to ask yourself a question: are the real killers behind bars?
Tony Tucker, he's my best pal. And I still don't know what happened. It's all whispers and rumours. They've made books, films about it. What's fact? What's fiction?
Someone out there knows what really happened.
I was involved at a very high level. You try and get to the truth of the murders, and this is the truth.
Murders have shone a light on the dark side of the rave scene.
(1988), that was the year rave really landed. Before then, we were just getting pissed in some cheesy nightclubs or something. But as soon as we heard about illegal raves, we knew how to get in there and be part of something different.
The areas where we lived, they were very industrial areas, you know. All the warehouses were kind of derelict because where Thatcher's government had empowered entrepreneurs, if you were in the stock market, it was great. If you were a factory worker, you were suffering. You know, places were getting closed down.
These massive illegal buildings, they were like the perfect venues for us to put on parties.
To set up a warehouse party, we had a warehouse hunter. So he'd be driving around the back streets looking to find a warehouse, and when he came up with a warehouse, he'd jimmy off the door, break the padlock, put a new padlock on it, and that was our location. That could come sometimes on a Friday night, wouldn't even the night before the party. People wanted to go for the excitement of going to the legal rave. After that, it just exploded like a whirlwind. You know, it went overnight, no one saw it coming, and it literally just took over. And we were at the centre of it. We were putting on party after party after party, and Essex was loving it.
We were young, you know, this is like we're 16, 17. We couldn't believe how fast the whole scene had grown. Literally, none of it would be possible without ecstasy.
Ecstasy brought them all together because it broke down all the barriers and people went there and they partied together. That's what opened up the market in terms of drugs. Anyone could sell them and no one would take them off you. At the time, I was working as a doorman in nightclubs. And it wasn't really a drug scene then. I'm 29 years of age. I've never took a drug before in my life. But then one day, my mate asked me if I'd heard about the warehouse raves. And he said, we need a security team. The next thing you know, we're in the middle of nowhere. Like an East abandoned warehouse. Music blaring and lasers and strobes. They're all buzzing and hugging each other. I was talking to my mate Dave. I said, what are people taking? Because there's no alcohol. I can't see no joints, nothing like that. He said, ease, ecstasy. And I went, what's that? People were buying pills for like a tenner. He said, have one. Try it. He said, but don't take another one. He said, just have half. He said, they're really powerful. I went, well, this little pill here like that. I went, come on, let's do it. All of a sudden, the music made sense. And I just felt my body, like, everything going. It was like best buzz I'd ever been on in my life. And we was walking through the dance floor, and like Dave's like 6 foot something, I'm like 17.5 stone of steroids. I went, I can't move, Dave. He went, what? I said, I'm struggling. He went, I'm stuck in this stroke. He went, hold my hand. I'll walk you through. You can imagine these two doormen walking through all the crowds, holding hands like that. I was completely out of my nut. Then I had another one. Boom, jacket off, everything, got a tight vest on, didn't I? Dancing away. People going, Carl, you've got to work. I went, no, I'm all right, I'll be with you in a minute. I'm on stage. Must have been about 4 hours. It was gone. It was like an whole world. I discovered a complete new universe. And I'm thinking, no wonder this is where everyone is going.
Acid house parties, or raves as they're called by those who frequent them, have become notorious for alleged drug taking, traffic queues jamming up the roads, late night noise and litter problems.
The parties that have taken place in Essex,
they cause tremendous disruption. We know there's a lot of drug consumption, drug dealing going on.
It got to a point where millions of people were consuming MDMA over every weekend.
This is one of the most serious problems the Western world faces. We have to do something here at home.
Government, media, police, they all hated it.
In every single newspaper, they were trying to drum up as much opposition to us as they possibly could. Once the police really clocked on, every single weekend, you know, an army of police were out just to stop illegal parties.
Because of pressure from politicians, the press and public, the police have now logged details of over 1,000 party helpers on computer. It's from here they're coordinating the crackdown. This is the party patrol, standing firm until 3 a.m. The ravers were frustrated, not violent. They believed their rights were being infringed.
From a policing point of view, ecstasy was something that kind of happened all of a sudden. You had to kind of get your head round it very quickly, because at these warehouse parties, people were starting to be taken ill with an overdose. You started to notice things like hospital admissions on a Friday night. I remember doing support calls to go down and help shut these things down. It would be literally like two tribes going to war. You know, you would stand up amongst them. Not only did you have the party goers, but you had the organisers. They hated us, we hated them. It was all out war. The police was at the point where enough was really enough.
I've never seen any violence started by any of these youngsters here who just want to dance. If there's ever any violence started, it's started by them. And you'll all agree with me, won't you? Let the people dance!
Police officers have asked the government for more powers to deal with the problems caused by so-called ravers to stop the huge gatherings.
Offenders could face fines of up to £20,000 or 6 months imprisonment.
It was like the last days of ancient Rome. You know, common sense told you it was the end. The reality was, when you closed the warehouses down, you had all these people who wanted to sell drugs. The only place for them and the acid house movement to go was the nightclubs. And that's how you saw the rise of people like Tony Tucker.
Tony Tucker, he's just one of them names that sticks with you. I heard his name on the scene in Essex. He had his own security company, doing the doors in big nightclubs and everything. And then one night, I was out with all my doormen, we were partying. Someone said to me, "That's Tony Tucker, do you know him?" I went, "I know the name." I went over and we started talking. And then we were on our own, just me and him, munching pills, out of our nuts, dancing, laughing, and that's basically the first time we met, over a pill. Not like over a pub, drinking at a pub, it was like over a pill, yeah. He was just like me, a normal background, working class family. We got really, really close. He became like a brother to me, and we sort of ended up doing sort of security firms together.
I worked with Tony Tucker in a nightclub in Romford. Fancying themselves a hard man like any doorman does, I suppose. But he considered himself, you know, a good-looking fella. Didn't like to be hit in the face, you know. He said he'd leave that to the likes of me. He was a good guy. He could have gone a different route if someone else had offered a different opportunity. But he had a fierce drive to be wealthy. He was always looking for the next opportunity to make money.
Acid House, the music that inspired a cult and official outrage. The music and its fans have taken over Clubland.
Just to go and rave and just be happy, that's all it is, man.
There are huge profits to be made, both legally and illegally.
One night, the doorman arrested somebody for selling drugs. They brought him up to the office to give him a clipping. They emptied out his pockets, and Tony saw like he had $2 in his pockets and a whole load of pills. And he sat him down. Instead of giving out hiding, he said, "Explain all this. What's the money? How did you get that much, you know, in 3 hours?" And then he was sharp like that, you know. He saw an opportunity immediately. Tony knew he was in the perfect position to take control of it. All security who run the doors control a club.
Tony definitely had brains, a criminal intelligence, really. I worked in a club in Southend, and Tony said to me, if they're making money selling drugs in the club that I'm running, surely I should be doing that. And he said it's easy to allow certain people to come in and sell their drugs in the club, providing they pay you a percentage or a rent, 20%, 40% of it. And anyone else that would try to do that obviously would be ejected.
it was money handed to him immediately. Next Friday, I'm going to have £2 grand in my pocket, and another £2 Saturday, and the following week then it was £3 and 4, and eventually he was taking the bones of 10,000 a weekend, you know. Tony then started going to some of his nightclubs, telling them, you have to sell my drugs now, which gave him more profit.
After that, Tony did rocket into, like, big time. Brand new Jaguars, new Porsches. He had power, money, drugs, and the feeling of being invincible.
I was barmaid, working at Raquel's, one of his clubs. The atmosphere was always electric. And everybody was always on ecstasy. People were popping different pills all night long. So by the time it was 2 o'clock, it was absolutely crazy. Being truthful, I can't remember having any fear or worry about it in any way. At the end of the day, everybody in there was the same, you know, so nothing bad's happened to nobody and everybody's having a great time. But then I heard in the news.
Leah Betts collapsed after taking a tablet which police believe may have been contaminated.
Detectives say the tablet taken by Leah was one of 4 bought by someone she knew at a Basildon nightclub.
After that, everybody panicked. It was being said that she bought the drug that put her into a coma in the club.
I think it's horrible. Can't believe it happened. I think it's opened a lot of people's eyes as well. It's definitely opened mine a lot more. I will definitely never take anything.
Apparently, it was one of her mates that had actually passed it to her. But then, who did he get it from? Who was the dealer above? I just didn't think that when people found out the answer to that question, it could end up in murder.
My daughter paid £10 for this pill. That's very likely to cost her her life. I've got love for my daughter. I've got anger for the people with the drugs. And I hate this bastard that supplied them.
For us as a local newspaper, this story was huge for us. We heard that this young woman took an ecstasy tablet at her 18th birthday party, bought at Raquel's nightclub in Essex. These were unusually strong tablets. The medical advice was that if you were going to take ecstasy, to drink lots of water because of the strength, and she was panicking, got worried about it. She managed to consume 7 litres in about 90 minutes. It made her brain swell. It meant that she became violently ill before collapsing, and she slipped into a coma. Her father, Paul Betts, made the decision to take that photograph of Leah Betts lying in her bed with the tubes and share it with the media.
Leah's fight ended this morning, 4 days after her 18th birthday. The dangers of drugs, in particular ecstasy, have been much highlighted following the death of 18-year-old Leah Betts.
She was the headline story absolutely everywhere.
For Leah's parents, the grieving continues, remembering a daughter who should have still been enjoying her teenage years.
That picture carries more than I could ever say. Just look at it. you want to end up like that?
In those days, there was very much a perception that things like ecstasy, they were done by a certain group of people, people who'd been left behind by society. Nice, middle-class families weren't impacted by that kind of thing. By taking that photograph, Paul and Janet Betts said, no, this is everybody's story. This could be your child lying in this hospital bed. And it just shook society up enormously.
Today, the Home Secretary announced that police forces around the country will step up the fight against drug suppliers.
The pushers must be punished. We owe it to Leah's parents and millions of other parents to stop the pushers poisoning our children.
More than 30 officers are now engaged in the hunt for the dealer of the drug that killed 18-year-old Leah Betts.
An anonymous teenage caller told police of an ecstasy supplier inside Raquel's nightclub, where Leah is thought to have bought her tablet.
I was part of a unit who would specifically focus on the pubs and clubs. Because there was now direct information coming out, we suspected that Tony Tucker was the person controlling the drugs within the club. There was talk that Tony had directly or indirectly supplied the ecstasy tablet that killed Leah Betts. You know a lot of things that are going on, but can you prove them? Can you do something about it?
I remember a senior officer started throwing out the names of anybody suspected of dealing drugs in that nightclub, and we were just told to go and arrest people on suspicion of supply. And try and turn them as informants in order to start targeting criminals like Tucker at a higher level.
We knew Tony was getting more and more worried that the ecstasy would lead back to him. After the police hammered down, there was so much pressure, so much tension. He was going crazy. He thought everyone was going to squeal on me and I'm threatening them first. So he threatened everyone. Don't you dare put my name up or I'll kill you or I'll do this or I'll shoot you first. And was kicking and shouting and abusing people. He was threatening the doorman in Raquel's. You can all take the blame for it. You're not bringing it back to me. Didn't care about anyone but himself. Some of his dealers were running for the hills before they got caught up in it. Because it wasn't just the police who were upset with the situation. This whole anti-drugs crusade upset a lot of these big gangsters. Tucker was in the firing line for that, for sure.
My life revolved around nightclubs at the time. I was running one of the largest security company in Great Britain. I was doing all the raves, all the clubs in the West End, earning a fucking lot of money. Ecstasy was the major financial pin for everyone and everything. Every firm, every club, every doorman, every criminal, every gangster was involved somehow in the movement and sale of ecstasy. The Leah Betts situation brought the heat down on everything. More undercover old Billy in the nightclubs, more stop and search than there had been before. This new anti-drug campaign gave them the opportunity to get right in. On a massive scale like we had never seen. A lot of people thought Tony Tucker had something to do with what happened to Leah Betts. And on top of that, he'd already made some powerful enemies. Once you've actually got the criminal fraternity itself imploding on you, it's only got one ending. It's only got one ending.
Hello, police. Yeah, what's the problem, sir? We just drove down our farm track. Yeah. We come across a Range Rover with 3 people in it. Yeah. It appears that they're dead. I don't know what's happening. Blood in the motor all over them. It's at White House Farm, Rettendon. White House Farm, Rettendon. It appears that they've been shot. Alright, we'll get somebody on there straight away. Okay, bye-bye.
I've dealt with some serious crime, but this was the most serious, as big as Essex had had. When I first arrived at the scene, it was, in my opinion, absolute carnage. There was a lot of blood. In the front passenger seat was Tucker. He'd taken 1 shot to the head. And there were 2 others. The driver, Rolf, a local drug dealer, was still holding the steering wheel and looking straight ahead. And it was almost as if he'd stopped at red traffic lights. And in the back seat was a very big man, known to be involved with drugs distribution. He had gunshot wounds to the stomach. It looked as if he'd been shot more than once. I think the killings took place as soon as they'd arrived. I don't think they had any chance. They were lured here to be executed.
It was beside this farm gate near Chelmsford that the Range Rover containing the men's bodies was found. All 3 were shot in the head at least twice at close range with a shotgun.
The murder scene already teeming with reporters and photographers anxious to find out what has happened.
2 local men discovered the Range Rover at 8 o'clock this morning as they made their way along the farm track.
2 men in the front that I see looked as though they were asleep. You know, I mean, we've seen vehicles parked down there before, and usually it's people going off to take their dogs for a walk or a courting couple. You know, we don't usually expect to find something like that first thing in the morning.
I just remember it right now, as if it was like yesterday. That morning, I was just driving along. On the radio, they kept saying in the news flashes, 3 men have been found, killed in a Range Rover. Didn't say no names, nothing. And then my phone rang. My mate rang me and he said to me, there's some rumours going around. That's your mate Tony has died. And I went, ah, fuck off, fuck off. I think perhaps I didn't want to believe it. So I've got on the phone to Tony. I kept ringing and ringing and ringing.
Tony's cold, can you give us a ring? Cheers, mate.
I just had that gut feeling. It just felt wrong. So now I've rung his missus. Just got her on the phone. And I heard her screaming. Tony's dead, Tony's dead. He's fucking dead. I remember just laying down on the bed and crying my eyes out. He was my best pal, you know what I mean? And after that, all I was left with was questions. What happened to Tony, Pat and Craig? The not knowing was doing me head in. I kept asking myself, did they upset the wrong people? someone from the underworld. I mean, it was very professional. Was there a proper assessing? Was it because of what happened with Leah Betts? I didn't have the answers. No one did.
Time of the murders, I was on the South East Regional Crime Squad targeting serious and organised crime. As a result of information that Essex Police had received at the time, police could see that Tucker, alongside one of the other victims, Pat Tate, was clearly involved with some of the UK's most prolific and serious organised criminals living in Essex. These people were supplying ecstasy across the whole UK. These were dangerous people and they were violent people and gangsters. The death of Leah Betts caused problems within the criminal fraternity itself. There was heat being placed on villains. In the days before Tony Tucker was murdered, police had been raiding premises, taking out lorry loads of drugs and arresting people. Organised criminals lost a huge amount of money and a vast supply of drugs. And so there was a potential motive that, organised crime took them out because of the increase in police activity. Because we were looking at crime groups linked to the drugs trade before the murders were committed. We were already listening in on top-tier criminals. We bugged their phones, bugged their premises, bugged their cars. We had bugs in some of the most senior criminals' business premises or homes. On one occasion, I even had a probe in an office that was being used by the heads of organised crime. We were listening to them discussing how they were going to murder people, their intentions to murder people. So we knew we'd been right in the middle of their operations. But the intelligence around the murders of Tucker, Tate and Rolfe, we were getting no feedback as to who had been involved in this murder, which is unusual. It's very strange because, with a murder like that, anyone within the criminal fraternity would be talking about it.
Everything about their murder just raised more questions. There was a potential motive, but, when you try and add logic and try and piece it together, what's happened and who's done it, very difficult, very difficult. And then questions started to be asked. Could it be somebody completely different?
I've got love for my daughter. I've got anger for the people with the drugs, and I hate this bastard that supplied them.
We heard that the police were looking into Paul Betts as a suspect. He was an ex-policeman, so he could have potentially had that knowledge from his colleagues that Tony Tucker was the one who ran the door at Raquel's. He said that Paul Betts, on the day of the murders, decided to take a scenic route back from Leah Betts' grave, and he'd been in the area of the murders. That evening, Paul Betts had decided to go for a drive and test out his new four-wheel drive, and had been in that area again.
We shall always be with the Lord. Comfort one another with these words.
Obviously, there was clear motive. I mean, his daughter had been mercilessly killed by 3 scumbag drug dealers on her 18th birthday. That could push anyone over the edge. And on top of that, it was well known he had experience with firearms. It made sense.
Once the connection had been made, this was going to move incredibly quickly, and it did. Paul was brought in for questioning, and obviously that could have wrapped things up. Of course, it doesn't always work like that. The murder team found a vital piece of evidence that changed everything. He'd filmed an interview for national television an hour before the murders happened.
She'd scream, "They've never affected me like this." And that scream of pain and the cry for help will haunt me all the days of my life, because I didn't know what to do.
You can't be in two places at once, and so he was ruled out of any kind of involvement in this. So it left the investigation wide open.
Police detectives investigating the brutal killing of 3 men on a farm track in Essex are yet to make an arrest and are now airing a televised appeal urging anyone with information to come forward.
It was a crime which pushed everything else off the front pages. It was a cold-blooded, professional killing. The victims had many enemies, but which one wanted them executed? If you have any information which might help detectives, then call them now. Alternatively, you can call Crime Stoppers on the usual number.
We had to get to the facts, but we were working with fairly scant information. The forensic guys did their best, but as things turned out, there was very little that would identify the perpetrators from that scene.
Certainly it was carried out very quickly and efficiently. Whether it was done by an associate of these 3 men or by a specific hitman, I have no idea at the moment.
I was in the spotlight. You'd want to be successful in clearing up the crime because that shows that the police force is effective in its operations. There was also a huge press interest in this case. The top crime reporters were pestering me beyond what was normal.
The story just kept going and going. Oh, it was enormous. It was everywhere. You've already got the nation's press descending after Leah Bett's death. Just a month later, you have a drug-connected gangland killing of 3 men. Suddenly it's looking like Essex is the epicenter of this giant drugs war that's going on. So it must have put Essex police under enormous stress to resolve the situation.
As yet, no witnesses to the murder have come forward, leaving police with only questions as to what really happened.
The net went wide out to acquaintances from years ago. Even took a statement from someone who used to work with Tony. He hadn't seen Tucker in 5 years, you know. You could see there was too much pressure to solve it. And it was too big a case to just go on the cold case, because they'd be beaten over the head for years if they didn't solve this.
The police come round, knocked to the door, said about Tony and that. You know, the reason we need to speak to you because we've got a list of names, people capable of killing them. He said, your name's on that list. And I went, fuck, if you're going to say that, that's my best part. What are you talking about? I went, you're fucking mad. But they come round to see me about 2 or 3 times at my house and questioned me there. They were scrutinising you. You must know what happened. What happened? No, do you know? Who do you think done it? That's how desperate the police were. And they didn't have a clue, you know what I mean?
Today, Rolf's girlfriend appealed for help in finding the killer or killers.
I'd just like anyone who was with them maybe in the afternoon, who knows anything about what's happened to them, or if they see anything, to just come forward. We need all the help we can get.
Everybody wants somebody to be held accountable. but to try and find out who and how was proving to be a massive task. So many questions that all needed answers. And then somebody who was on the murder investigation said to us, "We've made a major breakthrough. We've got somebody from the underworld who's talking to us and saying, I can tell you who did it." It was huge.
This interview is being tape recorded. Time is 23:26 hours on Monday the 13th of May 1996. Would you please introduce yourself for the tape?
Darren Nichols.
First time I'd ever come across Darren Nichols was on the day that I arrested him. He was involved in the drug trade. He was involved in importation. We'd become aware that there was a new importation from Holland into Essex. Surveillance saw parcels of drugs arrive at the beach. We followed the vehicles. Darren Nichols was then stopped, and I found the drugs in his car. He'd been caught paying to rights. He was probably looking at a substantial prison sentence, but I had no idea how significant a role Nichols would play subsequently in this murder investigation. What happened after that changed everything, because to tell his story, potentially get a reduced sentence for his crimes, Nichols offered to become a supergrass and give evidence about what had happened on the night of the murders.
If you've made the decision you want to tell us all, you know it's got to be everything, okay?
Yeah.
In regards to the shooting of Patrick Tate, Craig Rolfe and Tony Tucker. So now it's over to you.
Yeah. Mick rings me up and he says, "Here, I've got to see you. We've got a coke deal going down."
Mick? You mean Mickey Steele?
Mickey Steele, yeah. He said, "Jack will be there. Jack Holmes. You drivers." Jack got out of the car. He had a bag with him. I just thought, money. He said, "We'll be 5 minutes." Jack Holmes got back in the car. Then Mick's got in the front of the car. And then they started chatting. They said, "Those fuckers are out of our hair for good now." Fucking sorted them right out. Killed all three. And I'm just sitting there thinking, fucking hell, don't ever want to upset these two.
This was massive. You could tell going into the investigation room, the atmosphere changed. We think we might have them. I don't think you ever say we've got them because of the people you're dealing with, what was his motivation for saying it and what have you, but it was like, wow, we might get a conviction. This is huge.
Today, Michael Steele and Jack Holmes were charged with triple murder at Chelmsford Magistrate Court. It marks a major breakthrough in a case that has become a symbol for the new war on drugs.
This case is a classic detective story. It is not often that we get these days a chance to actually pit our wits and our expertise against other people who have perpetrated a crime such as this.
I was delighted, of course, when it all came together. This was a tremendous success.
2 ruthless gunmen received 3 life sentences at the Old Bailey today for the execution of 3 drug dealers on a remote Essex farm track.
In sentencing the 2 men to life imprisonment, the judge told them they were dangerous with a hard and ruthless edge. They crossed your paths, he said, and you showed them no mercy.
Was it 100% concrete? No, I don't think so. There's sometimes you think, I'm absolutely confident, there's no stone unturned, this case is watertight. I think it is fair to say that it was very reliant on one person's evidence. I think at best this would be certainly a not 100% sure case.
If you'd have asked me at the time if Michael Steele and Jack Womes were guilty of the offence, I'd have told you absolutely, no doubt about it. But there's so many questions that remain unanswered. Knowing what I know now, I can't say that I believe this crime has been solved.
Many nights I've made me pillow wet with tears. Because of me, wife and kids.
My brother, he's not a killer, not Jack.
Looking at this case now, I realise that if we don't solve this, he's going to die in prison.
I don't know pull the trigger, but if they took him there, they took him to their death.
The Range Rover is the original crime scene, and we found it.
I'm sure what Darren Nichols said was true.
What I know about Darren kept me up at night.
Darren Nichols was a drug dealer, facing years and years in prison. Did he lie, or did he tell the truth?
The following program contains strong language, drug references, and images and descriptions of violence.
One. Oh, that was fucking excellent. I want to say I've seen some claps, but that was the best one I've ever seen. That's stunning. I was in Belmarsh for a £5 million cocaine importation from Bogota. I don't know whether you know what the special unit is in Belmarsh. It's a remand centre for the 40 most criminally minded criminals in Europe. I found myself in there with Womes and Steele. And I was in there for the murder of the Essex Boys. 3 drug dealers in the Range Rover. We got shot. Now, there'll always be a little bit of intrigue and mysteriousness around that murder. Once you've been locked up with somebody 23 hours a day, please believe me, you know them in a better kind of way than maybe their wife does. You learn men. Still, you know, he was a very clever man. He planned everything so precisely. Everything you needed to tick off to make it work, he had it inside him in abundance. Steele and Worms had a very close friendship, but there was definitely a leader and a follower. I don't know if they killed Tucker, Tate and Rolf, but anything Mr. Steele said do, I think Mr. Worms would do. Vicky Steele, but there's an aura in some people. When it comes out of their pores, you can almost taste it. You can smell it. And he had that.
I spent 29 years completely and utterly committed and dedicated to policing. Back in the 90s, murder was going through the roof at the time, shootings, stabbings all over the place. So you were constantly pitting your wits, your knowledge, your experience against criminals. I loved it, absolutely loved it. When you're in the police, your focus is on catching bad guys. I thought that all convictions are correct. It wasn't until after retiring that I started to realise there are wrongful convictions and cases that deserve to be looked at again. And so I started taking on board people who were retired from the police. We built TMI. One day, I got a phone call from Jack Holmes' defence team about the Essex Boys murders. I had a skin in the game because I had been the person who arrested Darren Nichols, the man who claimed to be the getaway driver, and went on to give evidence against Steele and Holmes. As far as I was concerned at the time, they were guilty. End of story. Basically, she said to me, Jack Holmes and Michael Steele always protested their innocence. They say they have spent over 25 years in prison for a murder they didn't commit. But after numerous appeals and applications to overturn their convictions, they're running out of options. The defence team then sent me through some material, and I realised there were still questions being asked about whether or not Darren Nichols did or did not tell the truth. Looking back now, you start to doubt some of the things that you thought were correct at the time. I said, let's look at this.
It was a crime which pushed everything else off the front pages. 3 men, all known criminals, found shot dead in the Essex countryside.
It was beside this farm gate near Chelmsford that the Range Rover containing the men's bodies was found. All 3 were shot in the head at least twice at close range with a shotgun. Patrick Tate, who was 37, Craig Rolfe, aged 26, and Anthony Tucker, who was 38, were said by detectives to be members of an underworld drug-dealing hierarchy. All had criminal records.
2 ruthless gunmen, Michael Steele and Jack Holmes, received 3 life sentences at the Old Bailey. Today's convictions have been described as some of the most important in Essex in the past 30 years.
In sentencing the 2 men to life imprisonment, the judge told them they were dangerous with a hard and ruthless edge.
Even now, all these years later, people are still talking about it on social media. There are so many different suggestions as to what happened. There's books, there's films. Some say they did do it, and some say they didn't. This case has created a mythology of its own. But you've got to cut through all that noise, speak to witnesses, go back to the papers, check everything that was presented in court, and get to the truth.
So on the night of the murders, Michael Steele is alleged to have set up a drug deal with the victims and lured them, on the pretense of that, down Workhouse Lane in Retterden here. So the prosecution say they have a number of pieces of evidence that put Steele and Womes at the scene of these murders. The majority of evidence comes almost exclusively from this one man, the getaway driver, Darren Nichols. On the one hand, you've got these two men who have spent every single day possessing their innocence, and yet on the other side, you've got the fact that the Crown were able to establish that there was a potential motive and that Michael Steele and Jack Womes had been connected to the victims going back years.
Back then, before everything that happened, my older brother Jack, he was just a normal guy. We done everything together. We was sort of like twins, really. Back in the early 90s, me and Jack used to have a speedboat. And Jack would be driving that boat all day long. It was happy days. Jack was a mechanic. He just loved boats and cars and motorbikes. And then me and Jack got in trouble for some cars. Basically, it's an insurance fraud. Went to prison, 16 months. It was a shock to both of us, you know. But this is where Jack and I met Michael Steele for the first time. He told us he got caught with some drugs. He was flying it into the country because he's a pilot, Mick Steele. He was a little bit older, wiser, you know, very clever man. For Jack, it was sort of like having a father on the wing. He was in a cell dead opposite. And then there was Pat Tate, one of the Essex boys. Mick was his friend when I was his cellmate. He was 20 stone, steroid up, drug-taking monster, but towards me, he was a lovely guy, you know, become me mate. I'm sleeping in the same room, do you know what I mean? You've got to be able to go to sleep if you're sleeping next to someone like that.
37-year-old Patrick Tate spent 10 years of his life in prison for robbery and drugs offences. Even inside, he kept up his obsession with bodybuilding.
Without the gym, you'd be lost, you know what I mean? There's nothing to do here, and when you're over the gym, you're in a different world, and you forget about prison, you're training, you know what I mean?
He had that violent side of him, Pat. He could change just like that. There was a cell thief in there because there was phone cards missing. Some guys took it on their behalf to beat him up. And me and Pat had walked back from the canteen up the stairs, and the guy lay there with his nose bleeding. And Pat said, what are you doing? And they said, we're teaching him a lesson. Pat said, no, that ain't how you do it. Smashed the sauce bottle, put it in his face, turned the sauce bottle, and the blood come back into our room. Then he picks the guy up, takes him over the landing, just drops him. Boom. The guy didn't die, the guy went to hospital, he never come back. Pat just done it as if it was nothing. You know, he was a very, very strong guy.
Action. Go. Go.
Everyone in the underworld knew Pat Tate. He was a one-man army on his own. You just looked at it and you knew that that could and was well capable of hurting you.
Stick that cap in your fucking ass.
After he did the prison sentence, Pat Tate was for hire. He started working for Tony Tucker. Tony was a businessman. There was the brains and the brawn there. And it worked perfectly. Tony was already taking over the whole drug scene in Essex. Just having Pat Tate on board made it, let me make you an offer you can't refuse. Yeah? My complaints department. Having Hercules in his army Tony Suckup grew ever so quick. But Pat Tate wanted to be more than just a muscle. In the era of the rave scene, when everyone was getting rich with the narcotics, Pat knew what amounts of money could be made. He wanted him and Sony to be the biggest buyers in the market.
In the early 90s, drugs were coming everywhere. There was a lot of small fields scattered all over Essex. A lot of small planes were bringing stuff over. Tony was my best pal, you know what I mean? We'd spoken every single day of the week. I could see he was getting deeper into the drug world. But when Pat came along, it was a different level. Pat wanted to keep going that one step more. It was like he wanted to see, you know, what they could get away with. Pat started talking about Mickey Steele. He was called Mick the Pilot. He said that he had formed a friendship with him in prison. If you wanted drugs, Mickey was the man to go to. He was known for flying parcels in and dropping things off for people in fields in Essex. Tony jumped straight on board with Pat's idea. He just thought he would make a lot of money. But then, a few weeks before they died, Mickey Steele brought over the parcel of drugs. And it was no good. And they couldn't sell them. Pat went ape shit, wanted the money back. Pat threatened Mickey Steele, said, if I don't get my money, I'll fucking shoot you. He threatened to kill Mickey Steele. At that world, you can't let Pat Tate just threaten to kill you. He was really dangerous. It's got to be dealt with. I met Tony a couple of days before, the night they died. We were all having a drink and Tony said it was all being put right. Pat and Mickey, they were going to sort it out. I went, are you sure? He went, yeah. Mickey had a plan to do another big drug deal. And I remember the reason they were going down this country lane, there was a dummy run, organised by Mickey. He was going to be in the car with them, take them to the spot, show exactly when the plane was going to come in, what the field was, where to park. So, my eyes, I didn't think there was in any danger, nor did they. Everyone thinks I know who actually killed them. I don't know. I don't know who pulled the trigger. It's all whispers and rumours. But Mickey still had took them there. He took them to their death.
The prosecution alleged that Mickey Steele, fearing for his life, worked with his friend Jack Williams to set up the ambush. So if one is guilty, so is the other. According to the prosecution, Jack Williams comes out of the bushes and shot dead 3 men in cold blood in an extremely professional manner. The question is, could a petty criminal with no previous history of firearms really have carried out one of the biggest gangland murders in UK history?
Two men found guilty of the notorious Essex Boys murders, Michael Steele and Jack Williams, are serving life sentences at a high-security prison.
As a journalist, I've always been drawn to stories of miscarriage of justice. I have a very strong sense that justice should be fair. One day I was sent a short letter from a Category A prisoner deemed to be dangerous. This was Jack Williams, the man who was convicted of the Range Rover murders. He asked me to look at his case. So I went to meet him in a Cat A prison. Going round it. It's very similar to airport security, only worse. They lift your hair up. They check your feet. Everything is scanned. Then I was led into a very, very small room. I mean, maybe 5 foot square. The chairs bolted to the floor, the table bolted to the floor. And the prison officers said to me, Jack will be coming through that door. If he gets violent or attacks you, that's the panic button. We'll only be about 2-3 minutes to get to you. The door opened and this man, 6'3", 6'4", and built, walks in. And he said, I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And he grabbed me. And then he gave me this massive bear hug with my feet sort of almost dangling, you know. And he said, thank you for coming to see me. I sat down with him for a long time, talking with him.
And Mick has been, you're stuck in here for so long. Family's suffering. Believe you me, they're suffering. Getting me freedom and getting with my wife and kids is more important than anything. I don't class it as a weakness, but I can tell you now. Many nights I've made me pillow wet, tears. Mainly because of my wife and kids.
When I said goodbye to Jack and left, the prison officer who told me about the panic button came to see me. It had obviously been a joke. As we walked out, he said, we all know he didn't do it, you know.
So on the 6th of December 1995, the Crown's case is that they came down the lane in darkness. There was a metal gate here, 5-bar gate. And according to the Crown's case, Michael Steele got out of the rear of the Range Rover, goes to the 5-bar gate, which is locked. And at that point, Jack Wombs is in the bushes hiding. Jack Wombs comes out of the bushes with a pump-action shotgun. He then comes to the rear offside door of the Range Rover, and then 6 shots, bang, 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 into Tucker, Tate and Rolfe. He then comes round at the other side of the Range Rover. Another shot fired from here, bang, breaks the window into Tate, and then there's a further shot fired from here into Tate's head. Every shot hit its target in an extremely professional way. What's strange is that Steele is meant to have travelled here with the 3 victims in the rear of the Range Rover, but the vehicle had no fingerprints, no fibres, no blood that linked either Steele or Wombs to this scene. So the question is, how did Steele and Wombs carry out this murder and yet leave no forensic trace at all?
Scenes of crime officers have already carried out an initial inspection of the vehicle, and it is towed away for further tests to be carried out on it. At most murder scenes, bodies are removed separately, but in this case, the SOCOs have advised that the bodies be kept in situ. Is it normal for them to cover the vehicle up?
Yes, it is, because it will probably undergo some further forensic examination back at the police station.
The Range Rover is the original crime scene. F424 MPE, that was the vehicle that they died in. And quite incredibly, we found it. We would love to do our own forensics, but we haven't been able to get access to the samples that we can test against. But it's an opportunity to establish as best we can what actually happened. Is the prosecution account plausible?
It's a very strange vehicle. There's so much conspiracy about it. It's just a very eerie thing to be in and around. We didn't know anything about the vehicle when it was auctioned. We just thought we had got an old classic Range Rover. It was only when we looked into documentation that we started to uncover what we had.
Richard.
Nice to meet you.
David, Philip, and Angela.
Nice to meet you.
The Crown's case is that Michael Steele travelled in the rear of the Range Rover to the scene.
Yep.
In your opinion, would he leave forensic traces?
I'm sure he would have done. This is a very, very tight space. And when you get into a confined space like this, with lots of nooks and crannies in the seam lines, you will inevitably dislodge fibres from the surface of your clothing.
Right.
You'll touch things, you'll touch seat back, you'll touch door handles. I'm sure that there would have been some signs left from them. But then, of course, in the mid-90s, DNA techniques weren't as sensitive. And it also depends on how well the thing's examined and how many samples are taken. Looking at the record, it seems that not enough time was spent at the crime scene examining it in detail, because it was muddy and it was snowy. And so the vehicle appears to have been taken onto the low loader quite soon. And dragging the car onto a low loader might have dislodged any tiny particles.
And what about Jack Wones, the shooter?
The shooter was actually positioned fairly close range. If you have the barrel of the gun close to or actually inside the vehicle, and essentially 8 shots being fired through the open door, the vast majority of the gunshot residue will be deposited in the vehicle. However, some of it will actually come back and go onto the shooter.
Right.
And then it appears that the gunman has walked around the car and fired a further 2 shots
through the window.
Through the window. And a lot of the glass and blood will actually come back at you.
Right.
The glass fragments will actually be deposited on the shooter's clothing.
Right. Effectively, the shooter's got glass on them, blood, firearms residue on their clothing. But there is no forensic trace material in the vehicle that allegedly picked them up, which is strange.
Absolutely. When you think about the activity that the shooter was engaged with, there ought to be some evidence of it.
Throughout my policing career, there are very few cases I've seen like this, where 2 men are convicted almost exclusively on the word of one witness, the getaway driver. Clearly, Darren Nichols was absolutely vital. So we have to get to the bottom of his account. Is Nichols telling the truth? Is his version of events the correct story, the true story of what really happened on that evening? Darren Nichols is a bit of a mystery. What we do know is that he met Michael Steele and Jack Womes in prison, and when they got out, Nichols gets involved in the drugs trade. He says he would get paid to travel out, pick up the drugs, bring them back into the UK with Steele and Womes, and there's evidence that supports that. Michael Steele was a drugs importer, absolutely no doubt about it. He was a criminal, self-confessed. What's much more disputed is what happens next. 6 months after the murders of Tucker Tate and Rolfe, Darren Nichols was arrested with 10 kilos of cannabis. He was probably looking at a long prison sentence. And at that point, in that interview, he named Jack Wombs and Michael Steele as being the people who'd carried out the murders.
Mick rings me up and he says, we've got a coke deal going down. You drive. Mick was going to be coming to the deal, but with the others in the Range Rover. He said, Jack will be there, Jack runs. So then Jack's in the car with me. Jack said, meet me back here when we phone you. Jack got out of the car, he had a bag with him. I just thought, money. Phone rang and he said, alright Darren, come and pick us up. Jack Rums got back in the car and then Mick's got in the front of the car. And they said, those fuckers are out of our hair for good now. Fucking sorted them right out. Killed all three. I'm just sitting there thinking, fucking hell, don't ever want to upset these two.
Darren Nichols was pivotal because, to be truthful, from the murder scene down the lane, there was pretty scant evidence that would help us detect who had committed this crime. We had no witness. We had no forensic evidence. Now, this man was able to put Steele and Wombs at the scene as the murderers. He clearly knew a lot about Michael Steele and Jack Wombs and how they had been dealing with the Essex Boys and selling them large quantities of drugs. He made several statements about what he saw and what time he went there, what was said in the car. There's an enormous amount of detail. And although I have to acknowledge that he was looking at a fairly substantial prison sentence for a drugs offence, so there was an element of saving his own skin. His evidence was examined in great detail, and it was pretty clear that what he said was true.
So according to Darren Nichols, the plan on the night of the murders was that the victims would meet with Steele at a pub, giving Nichols and Wombs a chance to drive to near where the crime happens. Wombs allegedly gets out the car and hides behind the trees. Meanwhile, it's alleged that Steele then gets into the back of the Range Rover and then leads them down the lane to where Wombs is waiting. Nichols then says that at 18:59 he gets a call to pick up Steele and Wombs and they drive off. So the victims have to be dead by this time. But crucially, just under an hour earlier, 18:06, one of the victims, Pat Tate, had made a phone call from here in Basildon. So the victims were alive at 18:06 here and dead by 18:59 here. So what we need to do now is test out this timeline. Do the timings fit? Albert, ready to go?
Let's go. I've done 31 years at the sharp end of policing dealing with murders, and after I retired, they invite me onto his team. For me, the timeline is crucial to this whole investigation. If we could prove that Tucker Tate and Rolfe were alive after 7 p.m, it would mean Darren Nichols' account is not the truth. We're going to now follow the route that the Range Rover had to have taken to the crime scene.
We're heading down to Gordon Road. Gordon Road was the address of Pat Tate
This is actually the last 100% corroboration of Tucker, Tate and Rolfe alive, all together in the Range Rover.
The phone call that Pat Tate makes at 18:06 is from his hardline phone in that house. Rolfe and Tucker turn up in the Range Rover, and Pat Tate be leaving that house there and coming out here to get into the Range Rover.
Yep.
This is where their journey starts. Let's go. Right, we're off. Start the clock. They have to be dead by 18:59. And 26 years ago, there was snow everywhere.
Yep.
Ice. The M25 had a 13-mile tailback.
Because of the weather condition. This is likely to be quicker today.
So we're now approaching what was the Hungry Horse. This is the car park that allegedly Michael Steele gets into the back of the Range Rover with the victims, going to direct them
to the murder scene, which is 10 minutes up the road.
And that's where Holmes is ahead and waiting.
And that's where Holmes has been dropped off by Nichols. But we're getting close to 7 o'clock and we're running out of time.
We're now literally 4 minutes away from their assassination. So that window of opportunity for the murders to have taken place has reduced down to minutes. Jack Holmes is now making that call. Jack Holmes is actually phoning to say, come and get me. The murders have already been committed. We're not even at the scene yet. Effectively, we are late for the murder. Well, we've arrived shortly after the time that they were murdered, according to Nichols' account. Even if you'd broken every speed limit and got here another minute, 2 minutes earlier, even then, it's extremely tight for Mick Steele to have got out, gone to the gate, Jack Holmes to have come out the bushes, 8 shots fired, then gone and made the phone call. It's all rushed.
Yes. We've asked this question of ourselves often. Could they have got from A to B in time here before they were killed? And from the timing perspective, very tight.
Back then, nobody else in the country was looking at mobile phone evidence and trying to track people's movements through it. But to my surprise, one young member of the team came to me and said, look, Gov, if you've got a mobile phone that's switched on, its signal makes a connection with a mast and you will be tracked. And I looked at him frankly, and I hadn't got a clue what he was talking about, but through Jack Holmes' mobile phone information, we were able to identify the vital phone call to Nichols. And we were able to prove Holmes was close to the lane where this murder took place. So that really was some fairly crucial evidence.
In a landmark moment for British justice, the Rethenden murder trial is one of the first to use cell site evidence, which, the prosecution say, places one of the defendants at the scene of the crime.
I was already a criminal Old Bailey's barrister when I was given the brief to represent Mr. Holmes. We were concerned because there was the suggestion that Nichols's story was corroborated by the cell site evidence. And of course, we were going to challenge all this. Jack Worms, was adamant about protesting his innocence. Worms admitted being in the area, so what was he doing? According to Mr. Worms, he was driving with a trailer to collect the car that had apparently broken down. The very car that Nichols is saying is being used for the actual murder. And Worms is making some call to Nichols from a pub called the Wheat Chief to say about the collection of that car. But we needed the picture painted to the jury. And we found a distinguished, totally independent expert to test the cell site evidence.
I have been involved in well over 100 cases, and normally I'm quite happy with what's happened in the trial. But this was different. The prosecution would say that on the night of the murders, that Jack Worms, after the execution, made a telephone call from here to Darren Nichols to come and collect him. That call was served by the Hockley cell site, but that cell site is over the other side of that hill, which effectively blocks the signal to the cell site. And not one of the tests that I made walking up and down the lane connected with the relevant Hockley cell site, and therefore it would be very unlikely that the call that Jack Worms made could have been made from the lane here. Then I went to the Wheat Chief pub where Jack Worms says he was recovering Nichols' car. From the cell site through to the Wheat Chief, there's a clear line of sight path. The measurements I made would indicate that the call could easily have been made up from the pub, which corroborated Jack Worms' alibi.
Ever since the trial and convictions, there has been a dispute over whether or not the evidence from the telephones and the cell site was correct. Now, mobile technology has moved on, so we can't go back and look at it again. Which means that for us as a review team, it may never be resolved. So it brings us back to Darren Nichols. Stephen Worms has spent over 25 years in prison because of his testimony. And we are going to have to ultimately answer one question. Did he lie, or did he tell the truth?
Everything I've told you is absolutely true. I've got no reason to lie. I've told you the whole truth about everything.
It became known as the Range Rover Murders, but it was more than that, a clinical gangland execution. Drug dealer Darren Nichols, who claimed he'd been the getaway driver, is now living under a new name, under police protection.
It was his evidence that would prove crucial in the conviction of the two men.
The trial went on 5 months. Near the end of the cross-examination of Nichols, we thought, yes, we're on the winning streak now. So did Jack and Mick. By the end of the trial, the judge turned to the jury and he said, heed my advice. If you believe Darren Nichols, convict. If you don't believe him, acquit them men. Heed my advice. And then the jury goes out. Monday morning comes and they called the jury back and thought, yes, we've got a verdict. Verdict's here. You're on the edge of your seat. The judge said, forming the jury, have you come to any decision? And when they come out with guilty, like all your blood in your body just gone to your feet. You know, you're just sitting there, what? You know, you just can't, you just couldn't believe it. Members of the jury cried. 4 members of the jury broke down. Jack and Mick, they never commented or shouted or nothing. They just walked out.
David, we've got a man who's come forward and says he knows something about nickel testimony. He's seen on social media that Steele and Worms are planning a new appeal and wants to meet us. And apparently he was in the same cell block as Darren Nichols in the Witness Protection Programme.
Is he credible?
Well, he's definitely putting himself at risk, and I don't see any reason why he's lying.
I think this is him. It's got to be him. Yeah, that's him. There we go. There we go. Thanks for agreeing to meet with us. Can you just take us back to the very beginning and explain how you come to meet Darren Nichols?
I was in the Protected Witness Programme. Got caught manufacturing ecstasy tablets. Darren Nichols turned up at the unit. He was there for several months while he was waiting for testifying against Steele and Worms. He hadn't given evidence yet.
What did he say about the murders?
Everybody had heard about the Range Rover murders. He would, I suppose the best way to describe it would be to hold court, if you know what I mean. But he never expanded on what actually happened. But when the day of his trial was getting near, he came into my cell one day and said, "Can I talk to you?" And he shut the door. He then sat down and proceeded to tell me that what he was going to say on the witness stand was coached by the police. They want him to memorise this timeline. It's in specific detail, but he was frightened of getting that script wrong.
He said this, did he?
Yeah.
That he'd been coached by the police.
Yeah.
Why didn't you come forward at the time?
At the time, I assumed there was a whole raft of forensic evidence, and I'm assuming that Darren's evidence is just the icing on the cake. And it was only very much later, after the trial, that it hit me that it was Darren's evidence that had convicted Steele and Worms.
The fact is that this murder was so high profile, there was massive media pressure at the time for the police to solve this case. And the only people who are going to be able to answer the question whether or not they crossed the line to get a conviction is the officers themselves and Nichols.
When I was a senior investigating officer, I very rarely got involved with interviewing the people who had been arrested. But I'm pretty certain that Nichols would have been handled correctly. At the end of the day, the police don't coach. And what I do know is that what Darren Nichols presented to the court was examined in minute detail, and the jury believed what he was saying.
The stakes are high. Darren Nichols' evidence has effectively put two men in prison for their entire lives. But for me, what we found raises serious doubts about what he said on the witness stand. Now, I'm much more concerned about the convictions, and if there is a question about their guilt, if they were innocent, the man who actually did do the murders is still walking the streets.
who killed Pat, Tony and Craig.
I'll tell you what happened.
You're trying to get to the truth of the murders, and this is the truth.
Various people have come forward and say that they are the killer.
I wasn't bothered about the money. It was principle.
If you rise up and then you're doing bad things to other firms, there will be a comeuppance for that.
I had to kill them to get them off my family. And if I'd have died with it, that was irrelevant. I had to kill them. But somebody got in there first.
The following program contains strong language, drug references, and images and descriptions of violence.
Nice to meet you.
We know that you're involved in some of the most senior crime groups in the UK. Why did you want to meet us today?
You're trying to get to the truth of the murders, and this is the truth.
So can you tell me how it was set up?
I can.
Do you know any of the people who were involved?
You've got to be a bit careful because it's conspiracy to murder.
Do you think that either Michael Steele or Jack Williams were involved in this?
No, not in any shape or form whatsoever.
And how can you be so sure?
Because I was involved.
We've been looking at this case now for 2.5 years, over 2.5 years. And without doubt, it's the biggest case we've come across.
It was beside this farm gate near Chelmsford that the Range Rover containing the men's bodies was found. All three were shot in the head at least twice at close range with a shotgun.
What's at stake is whether or not there has been a miscarriage of justice.
Two ruthless gunmen, Michael Steele and Jack Williams, received 3 life sentences at the Old Bailey. The convictions have been described as some of the most important in Essex in the past 30 years.
There's no fingerprints, there's no blood, there's no DNA, and we found very little material that supports and corroborates whether or not Steele and Williams are guilty. What it comes down to is the testimony of Darren Nichols, and we found evidence that raises serious doubts about what he said on the witness stand. But Darren Nichols is in witness protection. We can't question him. That's as far as it goes. And so our best hope is to find evidence that someone else carried out the murders. We've read every last piece of paper. We've talked to everybody we could talk to, scouring for any information that's out there. But it's complicated because it's been built up into a great big frenzy of theories on social media. There's one group where 56,000 people follow it. You know, there's YouTube sites that pump stuff out on a daily basis, which means there are so many different suggestions as to what happened. So we have to tread carefully, because so many of them could turn out to be nonsense. But one of them could turn out to be true.
This is my studio. This is where we make all the videos and we try and get to the bottom of this case. I've been doing this for ages now, but never in a million years did I dream it might be me that found the answer to what really happened. All my life I've been fascinated by the gangster world. You know, I'm a father of 4 and I couldn't be further away from being a gangster or a mafioso, but love it, absolutely love it. Especially the Essex Boys. I started years ago. I found out about all these online groups. You've only got to go on them for 10 minutes and you're hooked.
It could have been the farmers that owned the land. It could have been the police. It could have been somebody in the criminal underworld.
I started making videos and putting them up online to talk about the Essex Boys case. What is the underworld?
Robbing, stealing, cheating.
If they went on trial today, they would have walked it. They would have gotten a unanimous not guilty.
Our channel was escalating so fast, hitting thousands of views. And that's how it all happened. One day my friend Lee said to me, I know gangster Steve Niparellis, and we could possibly get him on board to speak about the Essex Boys. He knew Tucker Tate and Rolf. He rolled with them, he's in their gang, he done jobs with them, you know, dealt drugs with them. So Steve Niparellis, for me, was absolute gold.
I'm here today with Steve Ellis, otherwise known as Nipper. So we've got some questions here from the Facebook group, Essex Boys The Truth, Nothing But The Truth. Who out of the 3 did you get on with the best?
Pat. All the way through the interview, I'm asking question after question. It was very interesting, but nothing new.
So Tony was always money orientated. That was it. He lived for money.
But it soon changed.
Right, final question. This is a question everyone wants to know. Who killed Pat, Tony and Craig?
I had no idea he was going to confess the part he played in their deaths. The whole incredible story.
I'll tell you what happened, right?
We was like, wow, that actually could be true. That could be true.
Me and the Essex Boys went back a long time. I was a criminal. Fraud, robberies, theft. In them days, it was commit crimes, get nicked, get banged up, get out, and do it again. And I got sent to Chelmsford. I got remanded to Chelmsford Prison. That's when I met Pat Tate. He was a good friend. And when he got out, we sort of started our criminal empire. Drugs, selling drugs, burglaries, nicking safes. It was great. But then Pat was out one night and he said to me, he said, oh, I met this guy last night, Tony Tucker. And he said to me, he's a really good guy. I'd heard Tucker's name. He had a reputation as a real gangster, running ecstasy dealers in clubs. And he had 100-odd doormen working for him. You know, if you fall out of them, they're going to frigging hurt you, yeah? And apparently people were saying he was doing too many drugs. A load of crack, getting paranoid. Next thing I know, Tony convinced Pat to basically be his enforcer. You know, people who didn't pay their debts, Tony would get Pat to smash them up, a crowbar on someone's kneecaps, and then Tony would get involved himself. When I used to sell drugs, you didn't need violence or threats. It was business. But with Tucker, it was clear that he lived for the violence, for the fear, for the intimidation. I just knew this wasn't going to be a good friendship that was going to end in a good way. But at the time, I had no idea how things were going to escalate. One night, Tony was at home with his girlfriend. Tony also had a relationship on the side. She phoned me up one night and she said, "Oh, hi Steve, where's Tony?" I said, "Well, he's at home, isn't he? Probably shagging the arse off his other girlfriend by now." Just an off-the-cuff comment, rude, whatever you want to call it, that's what I said. And Tony didn't like it. "Oh, you disrespected the great Tony Tucker." All of a sudden, Tony turned up to my house. He was like glassy-eyed and a bit frothing. I don't know what he'd taken. He got me by the throat and he started hitting me in the head with a gun, and I honestly thought I was dead. But then he's got me on the bed and he's pulled out this meat cleaver and he's going, "Your hand or your foot?" So I held out my right hand, shut my eyes and thought I'm going to scream. But then, for whatever reason, he's walked out the room. So I got out as fast as I could. I lived in fear. A couple of days later, my dad phoned me up, said someone's knocked on the door. My dad was cautious. He's gone to the bedroom window that overlooked the front door. He's opened the window and the guy said, "I'm looking for Steve." My dad went, "You don't live here." And the guy went, "Oh, I've got something for him." Opened the waistcoat and showed a gun. He told my dad, "Pat and Tony are going to get the family." I've got two sisters. One was 4 and one was 14. What they were going to do was chop my sister's fingers off, one at a time, until I would go and face the music. And that was it. I knew what I had to do. I was going to go and kill them.
Why couldn't you go to the police?
What are they going to do? Smack them on the hand, say, "Naughty, naughty, don't do that. Don't threaten Steve and his family." There's no going to the police. I had to kill them to get them off my family. And if I'd have died with it, that was irrelevant. That was totally irrelevant. I had to kill them. If you got children, or someone hurt your sisters or brother, you'd fucking kill them. But I never had the bloody chance. Whatever time it was in the morning, the phones rang. And my dad's gone, "They're dead, they're dead." I went, "Who's dead?" He said, "Pat, Tony and Craig." I couldn't believe it. I said, "Dad, what the hell have you done?" "Don't worry, nobody knows." But he told me he killed them. He did it for his family.
These are obviously big claims being made by Steve Niprellis. We have to approach something like this with caution. There's clearly a motive, and he was associated to the victims. So we need to establish whether there's any credibility to the claims that he's making. Thanks for agreeing to meet with us. So your dad basically he's confessed and he's given you a detailed account of how Tate, Tucker and Rolf got killed and what happened.
My dad said that they drove up the lane. As they got to the gate, my dad's there with the pump. His words, so if I get it wrong, I get it wrong. As my dad come round with the pump action, Pat's seen the pump action and gone like that. So he took the first blast in his ribs. Right? Now, all I can assume is, you know how loud a shotgun is, it's deafening. So you've heard the shotgun, you've frozen, you're shocked. Craig didn't move, from what I've been told, right? So bang, so as soon as you load the pump, bang, in Craig's head, bang, in Tony's head. Didn't even know what freaking hit them.
Did your dad tell you in that much detail?
Possibly.
Right.
Because we spoke about it a couple of times. When he was dying, I went to see him in hospital a couple of times when he was dying.
When was that? When was that, roughly?
2016 he died.
Right. And so when you was meeting him, he was still talking about it in 2016?
How can I explain it? It was like he wanted to just... we were just talking.
But it's really extreme. If your dad did kill him, that's a really extreme act.
My dad was a criminal well before I was flipping on the scene. I obviously see my dad and worship my dad as I worshipped him. He was frigging nuts. We had an argument with someone once. He pulled a blade out, and my old man's got this frigging knife, and he's stabbing the guy up in the broad frigging street.
So just talk through, tell me why. Did your dad say how he got Tucker, Tate and Rolf down the lane?
It was a drug drop set up. Pat, Tony and Craig, they was enticed to this meeting.
By who?
I don't know. I don't know. He had his other friends, and I don't know who they were.
You know, when he was telling you the story, did he ever give you... Did he say what time of night this happened?
He didn't say a time.
Right, OK. And did he say what happened afterwards, where he went afterwards?
No.
So he didn't go into that sort of detail about...
No, I wouldn't have been interested.
Right.
Is there any way that you can help us corroborate what your dad told you? Where's the corroboration?
There's not.
There's not?
No. I've got no reason to lie. I get nothing out of this, right? I've got nothing to lie about. I'm just telling you what my dad told me.
How come it took so long? Or give me your understanding of why you didn't tell the police, get the two guys you locked away, released from prison.
Sorry, look, without being rude, I don't care you don't believe me. Don't bother me that you don't. Don't bother me if anyone don't believe me.
You believe your dad did it, didn't you?
Yeah, I believe he did it, and good on him. Right? I just wish they'd have frigging suffered. Because from what I know, from what I've been told, and from what I've seen, they didn't bloody well suffer. They should have suffered. For all the shit that they caused, not just for me, but for everyone, they should have suffered. It shouldn't have gone as far as it's gone. And fucking people shouldn't be in prison that are in prison, right? And then pieces of shit should have suffered. That's what I know.
His dad sounds like a villain. His dad sounds like he could have been involved. He had the motive.
Yes,
clearly he had the motive, but didn't sound right. But it's just the way he said things.
Yeah.
Just didn't.
There's no corroboration. It just doesn't stack up.
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
Who lured him down the lane? Wasn't his dad capable of getting Tucker, Tate and Rolf down the lane for a serious drug deal? That would have needed much bigger players to be involved.
Nipper's dad wouldn't have been in that league.
To me, the whole ambush thing smells of a well-orchestrated, planned assassination. Smells of something far bigger.
Operation Tiberius Strategic Intelligence Report. Surveillance log. On the 16th of November 1995, ex-officer met crime boss who offered the hand of friendship by offering to take out the supply of the drugs to Leah Betts, who died of an overdose.
In the early 90s, before I went to prison, I was very entrenched within the London underworld. Drugs, robberies, violent kind of crime. And the crime groups I was connected to in London were the most powerful in the country. With drugs like ecstasy, there was massive amounts of money in it. We're talking hundreds of millions, certainly. And that money was fueling a power structure, all the way from running dealers on the street to buying politicians and police. The only thing that mattered was the bottom line. And anything that threatened that would be ruthlessly dealt with. The truth is, with Tucker, Tate and Rolf, they had become a big problem. And they were doing things that meant people around me were losing a lot of money. That's where it went wrong for them. Not only was Tony Tucker behind the frame of what happened to Leah Betts, and all the heat on the ecstasy trade, that happened because of that. It also goes a lot deeper. There was loose cannons with no respect. And it was common knowledge in criminal circles there was robbing other drug dealers. That would include robbing us lot in London. They would turn up to big deals. Instead of buying the drugs, they would just beat up whoever the dealer was, take the money and the drugs. There was constantly this kind of a thing going on. But they was doing massive amounts of cocaine and crack. You know, if frazzles the mind, they would do stupid stuff. But you can't have people robbing from you, or it's going to happen all the time. They probably thought they was invincible down there in Essex. But in this kind of industry, there's one thing's for sure. If you can't be controlled and you start to rise up and then you're doing bad things to other firms, then there will be a time, there will be a comeuppance for that.
I don't think they realised how bad it had got for them. I'd had a couple of phone calls about Tony. He's upsetting the wrong people. There was little warnings. But there was one night, it really became clear to me. It was Tony's birthday party and we was at Hollywood's in Romford. There was a big crowd of us. And it was all getting really messy, you know what I mean? Pat and Tony, they were taking E's, they was drinking and taking loads of cocaine. I mean, they were fucked out of their brains, laughing, joking and everything. But then I was standing to one side and these heavy duty people said to me, you need to speak to your pal, Tony. And he's been crossing boundaries, which he shouldn't have done. The big boys, they won't have it. They're going to end up getting killed, these boys. This was 2 weeks before they died. Tony was my best pal. I tried to get him to listen, but he didn't care. He didn't care what they were doing, you know. I told him, this is fucking not right. If you keep going on and on and on, like a rabid dog, they'll end up putting you down.
This interview has been recorded at Forest Gate Police Station on Monday the 15th of January 1996. There are certain things we believe you can tell us about the killing of 3 people in Essex. Trying to establish how the whole thing's set up.
Came in, sat at the table, started talking. So we might have to take him out of the game. So I'd like to be fucked.
Take them out of the game? What do you understand that to mean? Kill them?
Yeah. We're talking about people who shoot someone and think nothing of it.
I've just got to get clear what part you played exactly.
Driver. Drive someone, drive them away.
Who was that?
Hitman. Drops them off by the farm gates.
These interviews by a man we're going to call Witness A were recorded just over a month after the murders. They outline a conspiracy within organised crime to lure Tucker, Tate and Rolf, the Essex Boys, to their deaths, arranging a contract killing. because the Essex Boys had stolen from them. The story that Witness A puts forward is that organised criminals had set up a robbery of a security van. Some of the proceeds of that robbery have been given, most likely, to Tucker to look after. But Tucker had spent the money. In their eyes, he'd stolen the money from the armed robbery. He'd already upset so many people in organised crime. This was the final straw. If this version of events is true, it completely rules out Steen and Womes of any involvement and contradicts the story of Darren Nichols, as Witness A says he was the real getaway driver on the night of the murders. But the man giving this account is a criminal. So the question is he telling the truth? Roddy, we've come into possession of an interview of a man who we'll call Witness A, which were obtained originally by the defence and then passed on to us. One of the things we need to do is establish the credibility of that person, and my understanding is that you knew this man reasonably well.
So my initial contact arose out of an investigation into a shooting in East London. Witness A was quickly identified as the primary suspect.
Right. He's a serious criminal himself?
Absolutely.
And how would you describe him?
An interesting individual. It was quite clear to me from an early stage that he had a good knowledge of East London criminals at the time, people concerned or suspected to be involved in contract killings.
Did you have any dealings with him after that?
I did. I continued to meet with him, and he was providing information, and we were subsequently able to verify much of the intelligence.
He had put information up, that information was corroborated and was correct?
Absolutely 100% correct.
When he was talking to Essex Police, he spoke about his involvement in the Essex Murders, and he spoke about some of the major players, big names that had been involved in that. But it appears to have been brought out by police quite quickly. Is this something that you think should have been taken seriously at the time?
Absolutely. I would have anticipated that there would have been a whole raft of actions emanating from what Witness A had put forward. It's an avenue of inquiry that you just cannot ignore.
There were a lot of lines of inquiry in this murder investigation, but I can't remember this one exactly. What I would say is that it is not unusual for members of the public to come forward and say sometimes that they are the killer, or in this case they were linked. Now, various people have various reasons for doing that, but sometimes it's to muddy the waters of the inquiry or whatever, and they're looked at seriously, but sometimes you can eliminate them as people who are self-publicists, if you like, or something of the like, and this person may have been one of those.
We don't know exactly why Witness A's account was ruled out, but for us it's clearly worth investigating. Was organised crime responsible? Is this account the true story of who did kill the Essex Boys?
We're all a whole little clan. Said I got a bit of work for you, £5 grand. drive someone, drive them away.
Who was that?
Hitman.
Where'd you get all your instructions, all that? Where to go, what to do?
Canning Town.
This is Canning Town. This is where witness A said he was instructed by top-level criminals who put the contact out. And from the moment I read his account and this location, it immediately rang alarm bells with me. I was a detective here. I worked here for years in the Serious and Organised Crime Squad. This has always been one of the major crime hotspots in London. And the particular crime syndicate witness A named is well known to me. I know exactly how dangerous these people are. You know, they're linked to armed robbers, drug dealers, murders, corrupt policemen, criminality at the highest level. And so for me, it gives a credibility to witness A's account, because they're exactly the type of people who would arrange and carry out a contract killing.
Told me to pick the hitman up. Hitman got in the car. He didn't say too much. He had a sports bag with him. In the bag was a pump-action shotgun. At 12, maybe a bit later, he was gone. Left me sitting there.
Stephen, how are you?
Hello.
Right, you all right?
Hello, fine, thanks.
Good. So, Stephen, can you just run me through what you saw or heard on the night of the murders?
Yeah, I came up here at around midnight to feed our foal. Then I heard some shots which appeared to come from that direction.
Right.
If there'd been a couple of shots, I would have ignored it, because farmers come out and shoot rabbits. But as the shots continued to around 6, I made a note of it.
So it was unusual?
It was very unusual, especially as it was extremely cold night.
Right.
That someone was out there.
Yeah. And how certain are you about the timing?
Because the foal was being weaned. My wife fed her at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
And when I came in, I had the job of feeding her at 12. And I looked at my watch and I thought, well, spot on time, she'd be pleased with that.
Right, so you checked your watch and...
Yeah, I did.
And it was absolutely certain it's 12 o'clock?
I was certain it was 12 o'clock.
What did the police say about that?
I felt that they had other pieces of evidence about the time. The timing was said to be 7 o'clock. But I think there was somebody walking their dog at 7 o'clock that didn't hear anything. So I'm certain of the time.
The deeper we go into witness A's account, the more details there are that seem to have been dismissed.
When you went there that night, did you go to 127 and Wickford?
No, we come the other way.
When police first interviewed him, we know one thing they did was ask witness A to show them where he dropped the hitman, which was a completely different location from Darren Nichols' account. Just over there, literally a couple of 100 yards, is the crime scene where the murders took place. And a few hundred yards in that direction is Rectory Lane, which is where the witness took police and showed police exactly where the assassin had got out of the car.
The murder, and according to the Crown, witness Darren Nichols had been based on the fact that Jack Williams walked from Nichols' car down Workhouse Lane to the scene of the murders. Witness A gives a completely different version of events. They didn't come down that way. They didn't come through Rettendon. They didn't come to Workhouse Lane. They took the next exit along, which by road seems much further away from the crime scene. I don't think the police realised or understood the significance of what the witness was saying and how close, by foot, it is to this murder scene. Literally, it's a walk along this tree line. It makes perfect sense if you don't want to be seen. And it goes on. Witness A describes the assassin as wearing a tracksuit, a roll-neck jumper and trainers, significantly trainers, because when the scene was forensically examined, one of the only shoe prints that was recovered was a right foot trainer print immediately by the offside rear door of the Range Rover, which would suggest that he's leant into the car with the shotgun, killing Tucker Tate and Rolf dead. When you pull everything together and you look at this witness's account and the evidence that supports it, you know, the footprint, a series of shots being fired at just after midnight, and the route that the assassin took, this is a very compelling version of events. But it's not new evidence. Some of it actually appeared at the original trial. For a real chance to appeal the convictions of Steele and Williams, we'll need something far more solid.
So long, the family's suffering. Believe you me, they're suffering. Getting me freedom and getting with my wife and kids is more important than anything.
My brother Jack done 25 years. But to a lot of people, he's still a guilty man until the conviction is overturned. He can't go near the internet and he can't talk to the media about the case. And he's living with a lot of sacrifices. When he first went away, you know, his kids were 7 and 8 years old. That's you know, he didn't want them kids to miss out. They did. They missed out and they read their dad. Now, we just all want to get on. You know, we just want to get on with the life, but you still got that bit hanging over you to prove that innocence. I've always believed that the real killers are still out there. You want to know the truth, don't you? It needs to come out.
What's going on, David?
We've been contacted by someone who says that he was involved in the robbery, which witness A talks about. I've done some checks. He is who he says he is. So this could be really important. This could prove or disprove what witness A says in his evidence. This is crucial, absolutely crucial. Hello there.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for agreeing to meet with us. Why did you want to meet us today?
Good question. I've got no reason really to come forward. I've spoke with my family members about this, and they were against it. Did I regret coming down here today? I had second thoughts. If you're involved in something like this, you just try and forget about it, put it in the back of your mind as such. I wanted to block it out for years, but now it's time. And if it helps steal it in an appeal, it helps still. But you're trying to get to the truth of the murders, and this is the truth.
Can you sort of start at the very beginning and tell me exactly what you know, or what your involvement was?
There was a gun robbery. Basically, the robbery is the key to it all, really.
Right. How were you connected?
It was my job. I have organised it, and what it was a van of cash. £495,000 got stolen.
From the armed robbery?
Yeah. But the whole thing was a balls up, if you like, because very shortly after the robbery, some of the robbers went splashing the money.
Right.
And it wasn't long before everyone knew what had happened. Word got about, they couldn't keep their mouth shut, basically.
Right.
So it was quite common knowledge. So we got arrested. While we was in jail, some of the money was given to Tony Tucker, but it was just given to him for safekeeping.
Okay.
When we got out, obviously asked for the money back. That was not forthcoming. Excuses were made.
What sort of excuses?
Well, he's tied up, this sort of thing, he couldn't get it, just bullshit excuses, really.
Right, okay.
Yeah. By then he's drugged up, steroided up, he's running around doing all sorts of business. And in the end, we knew it just wasn't coming back.
Right.
Tucker thought he was bigger than everyone. He thought that there's nothing no one could do. He was wrong. Well, there is something we can do. A meeting was held to have the problem solved.
What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
Well, what happened? Shot. The money was paid and Tucker was murdered.
So who paid that money?
Myself.
Wow.
How? At the end of the day, I wasn't going to go rolling around the floor. I wasn't bothered about the money. The money was irrelevant. It was principle.
The target of the murder, the assassination, was purely Tucker?
Yes.
Right. So what happens with Craig Rolfe and Pat Tate?
No idea. They're obviously there, obviously. Yep. And it's collateral damage. They weren't the target. Unfortunately, it's wrong place, wrong time.
Do you know who actually committed the murders?
I never knew who was actually involved. I've never been told who actually pulled the trigger.
Right.
Never. Yeah, obviously, I knew it was done.
Yeah.
When I read about it. But I can remember opening up the newspaper and there it was.
Do you know who lured them down the lane?
No. I just paid money across. After that, I don't need to know.
Do you think either Michael Steele or Jack Wones were involved in this?
Not in any shape or form whatsoever.
How can you be so sure?
The hit was ordered through serious players from East London, Canning Town area. Steele, Wones, they weren't big players at all.
Well, what do you reckon of that? I'll tell you what, if he's telling a bloody pack of lies, he's bloody good at it.
I can't understand why anyone would come forward and confess to a conspiracy to murder. Why he wants to do that, I don't know, but it is quite incredible, quite shocking, really.
If we were 7 cops, we would have nicked him. He'd be in the cells by now, wouldn't he? You know, that's the bottom line. That's the real hard truth of it. Yeah. He's admitted conspiring to murder Tucker, and he should get his collar felt and nicked.
You're right. but potentially that's new evidence.
Yep.
That corroborates witness A. He's saying Steele and Womes didn't do it, and this was a well-planned assassination undertaken by an organised crime.
There is no doubt in my mind that Michael Steele and Jack Womes perpetrated this crime. Even though over the years people have tried their hardest to, you know, disprove what the police managed to achieve. But although Steele and Womes have professed their innocence as loudly as they can, the convictions of these two men are probably as strong as you'll ever get.
The fact is, we've got more material than's ever existed before that casts new light on what happened all those years ago. Ever since the rise of the Essex Boys and their murders, this case has been enormous.
The hunt for the killers has led to intense speculation the murders are connected to the death of Leah Betts.
But there's still so many questions that remain unanswered, and we might never know everything that happened down that lane, or all of the players involved.
The three men had to be identified by their fingerprints. It's thought they were killed by a gangland hitman.
And yet our investigation has put a real spotlight on how the criminal underworld works in this country, and raised questions about truth and justice. And though we may never prove absolutely categorically Michael Steele and Jack Womes are innocent, what we've found throws doubt on the convictions and should at least be enough to get this case looked at again.